This is Ryan Calambay. Let's tighten up.
Detroit, it's time to tighten up. Welcome to Tighten Up, the podcast, presented by The Shield NIL. Brought to you by Hyperice and Last Shot Energy. A state of the Titans, the latest in Detroit Mercy athletics, and a chance to hear from Titans all over the world. Here's your host, Dan Hasty.
I think it's safe to say that our luck has officially turned around, guys. We are back, baby. We are back. We are back. Yeah. Classic. We are back. We are back.
Six seconds, don't foul, they say. Ratinger launches, it pops out. Detroit Mercy takes it, and they take their biggest win in over a decade.
Yes, it is another edition of Tighten Up. The emergency season continues of Tighten Up. And how much fun has it been the last couple of weeks for Detroit Mercy basketball? A week ago, we were talking about wins over Wright State and Youngstown State. And this week, they go home, they stay home, and they take care of business against the state of Wisconsin. So now where does that leave Detroit Mercy? Well, in a spot where the games they have coming up have quite a bit riding on them. They either need to get a win against Robert Morris or Oakland or get some help. And if any of those things happen, Detroit Mercy is going to be looking really good for a first-round Horizon League tournament home game. And because of how everything sets up in the tournament, winning that game would actually put them in Indianapolis. And it'd be the first time since the Horizon League tournament was started there. So there's a lot on the line. And we're obviously so excited considering how everything's gone down. Wanted to say congratulations to Orlando Lovejoy, not only the Horizon League's Player of the Week. I think that was pretty much a guarantee. But the thing that I think caught us all by surprise was the fact that he was named the USWBA Oscar Robertson National Player of the Week. I mean, those are usually honors reserved for the Darius Acuffs of the world. Shout out to Detroit for him. AJ DeBansa, people like that. But now Orlando Lovejoy gets to join a very prestigious group. And we couldn't be happier. He's somebody that has really, in a lot of ways, been the centerpiece of the resurgence for this team. And obviously, he's had a ton of help. Nobody does it by themselves. And last week, we had a great chance to talk to Tyler Spratt. What a year that he has had. So excited to watch what he's done. Can't wait to see what that looks like next season. Same goes for TJ Nadeau, Ryan Calambay. So many guys who have had such really big contributions. Lance Stone, Legend Jeter. So many people are reasons why this Titans team is where they are. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right into it here on this episode of Tighten Up because we have ourselves two guests that people have been asking for a while now. One who's already been on this show, one who has not. And we're going to start with the one who has not. Bob Callahan is the winningest coach in Detroit basketball history. Of course, it was just known then simply as the University of Detroit. And there's a name that's behind him that is also synonymous with huge success during Detroit's time as a mid-major power. And it's somebody that we've yet to have on this show. We were looking for the right time and the right excuse to have him on, and not only considering the fact that this Titans team has started to course correct and has started to become the team we all hoped they would be, but on top of it, one of his older players, one of his very important players, just recently got inducted into the Detroit Mercy Hall of Fame. Derek Hayes, He just got inducted. Congratulations to him. He was part of some very significant Detroit Titans basketball teams, playing with the likes of Jermaine Jackson Jr. and Rashad Phillips, just to name a few. Perry Watson was the head coach for a long time at the University of Detroit, 1993 to 2008. And who better to talk about what he's seen from this group right now and tell us about all the things that got him through his coaching experience. And ironically, he's a little bit closer with this current coaching staff than you might think. Almost fair to say that maybe Perry Watson is now in his coaching the coaches era of his basketball journey. So we're going to jump right into it. We hope you enjoy our conversation. It could have gone on a lot longer than it did because Perry Watson is a walking encyclopedia as it pertains to basketball. Then coming up in just a little bit, we're going to check in with the creative lead for Detroit Mercy basketball. When you see things on social media, you may be saying, well, who's doing those? The answer is Alex Khorey, and he's got a few people helping him out as well. But Alex Khorey has been outstanding when it comes to sharing the stories of Detroit Mercy basketball over the course of this season. It's not only building the players' brands, it's building the team, and it's getting all kinds of attention because this team has been one of the best surprises in all of mid-major college basketball, especially over the course of the last month. And I highly suggest, if you haven't seen them yet, make sure you get on social media, whether it be Instagram or Twitter. But if you get on to any of those places, I'm sure you can probably see it on Facebook as well. But some of the videos that have been put together over the course of the last month or so, and this is going back much farther than that, but the ones that are showing these huge moments for Titans basketball, somebody with a huge hand in those productions is Alex Khorey. We've had him on this show before. You know him. You love him. You wanted to have him back. And now Alex Khorey makes his return. Enjoy Perry Watson and his first appearance on Tighten Up, the podcast. Well, when we started doing this show a handful of years ago, one of the things that immediately came to mind as we talked about, well, who needs to be on this show? Who needs to be on this podcast? One of the very first names that was mentioned was Perry Watson. And we have waited patiently for a really good excuse to have Perry Watson come on and join us here on Tighten Up. Well, not only do we have a team that is now in some ways looking like some of the teams that Perry Watson put together during his tenure as head coach, but he also had one of his most important players of his run at Detroit enter the Titans Hall of Fame. And now Perry Watson is here. And Perry, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk Titan basketball.
And we get to do it at one of the best times to do it, maybe in the last decade. But let's start with what brought you back to town. You were in town for the Hall of Fame induction of Derek Hayes. You know, so many people of my generation know your 90s teams. And I remember thinking about so many different players, and Derek Hayes was one of them. But it's got to make you feel so good to know that Derek is getting his due.
Yes, that's so true, because Derek was so important to what we accomplished there. I'm not sure if all the listeners know that Derek played for me at Southwestern High School. My last team, he was a sophomore on, and I had thought that he was going to be my next great player because he happened to be on the team with Jalen Rose, Vashawn Leonard, Howard Isley, all guys that succeeded at the college level and played 12 plus years in the NBA. So he was on a great team. 9 seniors, all 9 went to college, and then I left and went to the University of Michigan. So when I left, Derek was going to be going into his 11th grade year, and just stayed in touch with him. And so when it came time for his recruitment, the legendary Johnny Orr, who had been the previous coach at Michigan before, was now the head coach at Iowa State. So Johnny called me just to inquire if we at Michigan was going to recruit Derek, and if not, would I put in a word for him with Derek and his mom about considering Iowa State. So with that being said, I didn't think it would be fair to Derek to recruit him to Michigan. We had the Fab Five, and Derek was a great player, and I didn't want him to think that he was coming there to sit behind the Fab Five. So Derek ended up choosing Iowa State and was off to a great career under Johnny Orr, but unfortunately Johnny passed after his freshman year, and Tim Floyd came in to replace him, and they were not meshing Derek's sophomore year. So Derek's mom called me and wanted to know if I could, in fact, convince Derek to come home. And that was not a hard sell on her part. So immediately I got in touch with Iowa State, and Derek, when he transferred to Detroit, I knew I had a legitimate big time player. But in those days, you had to sit out a year. So we had to wait a year for Derek to perform on the court. And then with the players I was able to add to the team, man, just had a great career, led us back to the NCAA tournament. Tremendous game in our win against St. John's, and just was a joy not only to coach, but to watch grow from a high school athlete of mine to a full grown man.
So people today forget that you used to have to sit out a year when you transferred. And I think because of just how often players at the college level are changing teams, sometimes they're only at a school for a single year. So I'm fascinated by what that 1 year is like, that waiting period. And I'm sure that it wasn't only the case with Derek. I'm sure there were others as well. But what goes into that year? What went into that year, the transfer waiting period?
In actuality, that was a great thing because, times were different. Obviously, we really stressed getting a college degree and continuing to mature and adjust, because sometimes that year before they transfer was not a year that they maybe felt entirely good about themselves or the people that had recruited them. So sometimes that was the best thing, to sit out a year, get accustomed to your new environment, practice every day with your teammates. So with Derek, that was a great thing to do. That I think now the landscape does not lend to that. But Derek was able to be on the practice floor every day and really announce himself to the coaching staff, who didn't coach him in high school other than me, and also the teammates, because it was a situation where I had just really come to the university, and I didn't run players off. Players that were on the roster, I continued to work with and try to develop. But I'm sure that some of them had some concerns that, coach is bringing in one of his guys. And so without me having to announce him, Derek was able to announce himself every day on the practice floor by really his performances and the character that he brought, so that when he did become eligible, it was a smooth transition, and everybody recognized the talent and everything that he brought to the table.
He brought you not only those wins at Detroit, but he also helped get you over the hump with those 2 state titles at Southwestern. So seeing you at the induction this weekend, it's safe to say that Derek Hayes was revered in the eyes of his head coach.
No doubt, no doubt. And it was so gratifying, I'm sure, to he and I, that we saw individuals that he played with at Southwestern there to honor him, former assistant coaches that were with me at Southwestern that were there to honor him, along with all of his connections to the university. So he felt really good about what he saw and the honor, and he deserves it.
So many people involved with building a program. I sit here and I look at the current iteration of Titans basketball, and now with a coaching staff that is in year 2 of that build. And it's now gone faster than many of the other ones that came before it. And I'm curious, as somebody who was able to build it and do it the right way and have success, what were the most important things that you did when it came to building the culture of winning?
That's what it's all about. You really can't take any shortcuts if you really want to sustain it, and you as the coach want to be long term. I left a tremendous program at the University of Michigan, and I did not come to Detroit with the idea of being, a guy that was going to use that to go to the next position. Because if I had wanted to wait on, quote, that next position, I would have stayed at Michigan. I was the most visible assistant coach in the country. We go to the championship game 2 straight years. But my commitment to being a Detroiter and also being connected to the basketball community. I mean, most of the high school coaches that were in Detroit, in the public school league or the Catholic league, were guys that I had relationships with. I either had coached against them, worked camps with them. So it was really a welcoming type of environment when I came back to the university. And because I had known the, quote, glory days before, it was something that I said, this is what we're going to restore, and never put a timetable on it, just said we're going to do it. So when I look at the way the program is going now under Coach Montgomery, Coach Stone, I think they really understand that by being, Metro Detroiters. I remember when Lamonte first started coaching at River Rouge, which was a neighbor of Southwest Detroit, and I knew him and his family and just tried to always mentor him. And then with Mark Montgomery playing at Southgate Aquinas, we at Southwestern had a relationship with Aquinas. We used to preseason scrimmage every year. So I remember when Mark was a player. So I always thought when I was leaving the university, and even when I was there, that it made a difference in the coaching if you got somebody who was connected locally, spiritually, emotionally, just bought in. And not to saying that you could bring somebody from the outside that they couldn't do a great job. I just thought that, now with Mark and Lamonte, they could maybe lean on what we did. And, you look at our rosters that we had, they were loaded with Metro Detroit area players that came from the Catholic League, came from the Public School League. We got players from Flint. We had players from Saginaw. So it really was a hometown pride. And our guys felt like they were playing for their hometown. They would look up in the stands. So to see the way the Titan program is going now, I think they're definitely on the right track. You know, they are establishing the culture that they're going to play hard for 40 minutes and they're going to compete. You know, so now the next step is to hopefully get some of those type of players that are difference makers to commit to the Titans. And hopefully, you know, I know they always say, you know, times are relevant, you know, and I know when I was coaching the Detroit Public School League, the Catholic League, and those Flint areas were loaded with players. And I'm not sure if they're as loaded now, but there's still some diamonds out there that hopefully we can make inroads into and get some of them.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I know you coached Bakari Alexander, but I don't think people realize just how connected you are to this current coaching staff. What similarities do you see, whether it be from the coaches or maybe even from some of the players that you've been able to see over the last couple of months?
Well, Mark brings experience in. You know, he's not a first-year coach. He's been an assistant coach, you know, at the Big Ten level. He's been a head coach in the MAC. So he's an experienced coach. He's experienced failures and he's experienced successes. And hopefully, just like in life, you learn from them and you progress with them. So, you know, he brings that. You know, maybe some of the other coaches had brought that, but again, I don't think they had the necessary connections, commitments, or buy-ins with the Detroit area. Lamonte is a product of that environment. He was at all my games. He had a player or two at River Rouge High School that played for me at Detroit. So I see a lot of similarities. And again, Mark has to mix and match, you know, what works with him, his philosophy, his values. But from afar, in the conversations I've had, I think he's definitely on the right track. And all we can do is, you know, Titan fans just hope that he gets it there because I think that he is definitely legit and wanting to do that and respectful of our era of Titan basketball.
Perry Watson is one of the winningest coaches in the history of Titans basketball, and that's a pretty long history. I'm so glad that you feel so connected to this program. I know it was important to you when you were a head coach to keep kids in their home state, but it felt like the game sort of went away from that. And for all the differences that the transfer portal has brought us, it actually feels like it's helped teams keep their guys playing at home. What are you seeing as this transition has taken place?
I think you're correct. You know, any situation, you have to be able to adapt to make it work for you. And, you know, on the surface, the transfer portal, the NIL, and all those new changes are definitely more beneficial to the quote big time schools. Uh, but with that being said, there's an opportunity there for the mid major level to either make sure that you have great relationships with those young people, their families, uh, their coaches, so that if in fact they do choose to go to a quote Power Five school, things don't always work out. You know, like that old saying, sometimes the grass is not greener on the other side. And that's kind of what I always did because of my background. I made sure that, you know, I wish, you know, the Desmond Fergusons of the world, you know, I wish them success where they went to. And always made sure that the families, the coaches, they knew that if it did not work out, I still feel the same about you and call us. And we got some great transfer players that came back and they reaped the benefits of coming home and we reaped the benefits of coaching them. So it's kind of like you say with the portal. Don't despair that some of the kids may have their focus on something else, but if you've been in this game long enough, you know that it's not gonna always work out the way they see or the coaches that recruit them. Because the way recruiting is, sometimes the quote big time coaches see a player one time and they offer. Well, if you really take your time and do the homework that we did and really get to know the player and his abilities, a lot of times you don't make mistakes. But sometimes the big time guys think they see what they're seeing and it's not beneficial, and they now want to recruit, quote, over our kids for the next class. So I think that's where, Mark is at now with his staff. I think they're doing the right thing, establish relationships, establish a presence, at the events that they're at, whether it's high school events, whether it's summer events. Make sure that those players see that Detroit on their shirt when they come see you play, and that's what we always did. We was always a presence wherever those guys were at, and so I think that's a start, because then I think you're not an afterthought in those young people's minds. But there's enough players. You just have to be able to identify them, and I think you can identify them by spending time. And unfortunately, the way basketball is now, uh, the high school experience, the high school coaches, those things are sometimes outweighed by the summer league coaches and the summer league basketball, which I think is a bad thing. Because, as a summer league coach, you don't have no idea what the young man's academic background is, or what he's able to achieve academically, or where he needs help. I was a high school counselor, so I was really embedded with the academic side of students. So that when I became a college coach, I mean, I understood, how you prepare for, quote, the ACT, the SAT, how you improve and strengthen yourself. So, when you rely on summer league coaches, they don't have any experience with the academic side of it. So, it's different now. I spent more time with the high school coaches, the high school principals, the high school counselors, so that when I recruited a player like Jermaine Jackson, who I think also should be in the Hall of Fame now that I'm talking, who was probably the most important recruit to me, at Detroit, I was able to go in and educate his counselor into his senior year what classes he needed to be replaced, that would not meet the quote eligibility standards of Division One. And counselor trusted me, said, well, let's make this change. Let's take him and put him in trigonometry instead of something else. So it was a great built-in advantage that I had, because I was a product of the Detroit Public Schools. And even though Mark and Lamonte not, but Lamonte being a high school guy, those are the things that kind of impress, the young man. Because I remember Jermaine told me, he said, Coach, nobody came over to Finney High School and tried to help me academically. They always wanted to know what I could do for them. So at the 12th hour before Jermaine signed, Michigan State, a number of big time schools tried to come in, and I guess I'll use the word steal him, because, now they figured, oh, he can play for us. But to his character, Jermaine said, no. He said, I'm sticking with Coach in Detroit. That's who's been here from day one. So, Don, that's the kind of thing in recruiting. It's about relationships. And so you got to develop the relationship with everybody that matters. And I think it's a shortcut or it's a disservice that now they think the relationship with the summer coach is the most important thing.
Mm. So what I'm learning is that with the work in the classroom, it was that way then. And it feels like even today that Detroit Mercy as a university asks for more than most schools when it comes to academics. Can you explain what kids need to know about Detroit Mercy from that perspective?
Yeah, that's very important because I was an educator. That's what I used to always explain to people. Proudly was a coach, but before I became a coach, I was an educator. So education was very important to me because even though I'm so proud of my basketball players, I mean, you look at the students that were under me in high school, uh, our judges now, our lawyers, our doctors, I mean, that came out of Southwestern High School, and I was their counselor. So academics was always important to me. So now I married that with basketball, and I realized that you could use basketball to motivate the young people academically. And the thing that the university did before I took the job, uh, obviously being at the University of Michigan, we had all the resources that you could imagine. So when I got to Michigan, the Fab Five were all freshmen. And I remember, vividly having a conversation with Coach Fisher, because Coach Fisher had known me for 10 years because when he was an assistant at Western Michigan, he used to come recruit at Southwestern. Obviously, when he got to Michigan, Antoine Jobert and Leslie Rockamore was there. And from a distance, and I never knew it, he observed me reacting and interacting with them sometimes when they might have been disappointed in the way they were being coached or whatever. He would notice that after the game, I would be over in the corner, maybe talking to them, motivating them, asking them how they grades are going, and make sure you stay up. And both those guys are Michigan graduates, so that now I knew the resources we had from study tables and so forth. So before I took the job at Detroit, that was a big concern of mine. And in my conversations with Sister Faye and Brad Kinsman, I wanted to make sure that if there was some improvements that was needed to the academic side, the student support side, that as a university, we were willing to do those things. And to the credit of the university, they provided that because Sister was very embedded in academic achievement. I mean, when she came over to Detroit from Mercy, they didn't have an athletic program, so it was a learning curve for her. So I was really happy that they bought into my vision for student athletes and they improved upon it, and that's why the graduation rate that we had at Detroit. We always led the conference and were one of the nation leaders in our academic achievements. We never fell below the quote threshold in terms of that, and it wasn't just me. It was also the university believing in the support for the student athletes. So if you say it's still going on, I'm proud that it is because I know in life people can push things aside to get to a different goal, and we all want the Titans to win. But in reality, the most important thing is that we graduating students that can live an adult life, meaningful, and make contributions.
And they're making contributions in the city of Detroit. I mean, even just looking at this roster, more than half of the current team is made up of Michigan-based players, 6 of which are from Metro Detroit or the city itself. Next year, Greg Grace, who played for you, his son Greg Jr. is a nominee for Michigan Mr. Basketball. He's committed to the Titans. So I don't have to ask what that kind of stuff means to you, but I just looked up and realized that we are over time. But before we go, I wanted to ask you about one of the players you coached in Willie Green, because there's not many players that give you the real full circle experience where you coach someone through the process as a player and then they go on to becoming a head coach. What's that like, especially in the NBA?
Oh man, I'm so proud of Willie. When I recruited Willie, one of the things that I impressed about him and upon him was that he was a young man at that young age that was really well balanced. I mean, Willie had a spiritual life that was important to him. He was an achiever academically because he had aunts, uncles that had achieved at the college level. And obviously, he was a developing basketball talent. And I always said, Willie, you got to stay balanced. I mean, even if you want to be a great player, you cannot let your life get out of balance and you become less spiritual or whatever. So to watch Willie take that guidance, become the player that he developed into, and then, man, to have a 13, 14-year NBA career and have the same type of input and now become a coach. And he said, Coach, I'm telling him the same thing that you told me. He said, I'm passing it on. So I still talk to Willie. Willie is doing well. He's not done. He's going to be picking and choosing his next step. But, yeah, I'm really proud of Willie and so many of the guys that I coach.
Okay, before we let you go, this is the last one. I'm fascinated about what this team is doing this year. And we've had a chance to kind of cover the gamut of your life in basketball, but you got a chance to see these guys over the weekend, and you know that they're winning some games late in the season that are meaningful. And some of these players are experiencing that for the very first time. We're going down the home stretch of the regular season. We'll be in the Horizon League tournament here before you know it. What do these guys need to know about going down the home stretch when these games really matter for what feels like the first time in a long time?
It's kind of like I was telling Coach Montgomery, they really are hitting their stride at the right time because you want to have momentum going into the tournament. And I don't know if you remember, it really reminds me of my first year at the university. I had taken over the program and we got really hot toward the end of the year. And we actually went into the tournament and won the tournament. And it was a joy to see those players that hadn't received much success or definitely any championships, a chance to win a championship. And I see that with this team. It reminds me of that. They have the ability, they have the toughness, and now fortunately they're reaping some success. So what they really have to do, they just got to continue to be coachable because the coaches understand what's needed. They got to continue to put team first because sometimes you get toward the end and people realize that it's about over, and sometimes they go off on their individual tangents. But I think if they can stay focused, listen to their coaches, with the momentum that they've built up, that can always be the equalizer to teams that may be ahead of them in the standings.
Perry Watson, inducted into the Titans Hall of Fame in 2014. And this year, another one of his players follows him in with Derek Hayes entering the Titans Hall of Fame. Perry, this was excellent. I'm so glad you're still so connected with this program. Thank you very much for joining us. And frankly, I can't wait for our next excuse to visit with you again.
All right. Looking forward to it.
A huge thanks to Perry Watson. We had been waiting to have Perry Watson on this program for the longest time. We were just waiting for that perfect moment. Well, I think it's about as perfect as it's ever going to get. Perry Watson, it's one of those conversations that you wish could have been longer, but Perry Watson gave us so much in such a short amount of time, and cannot say how grateful we are that he is still so connected to this program. Now, let's move in to our next conversation. Alex Khorey is somebody who you may not remember the name of. Now, if you listen to this podcast, you probably do. He's been on this show before, but he's also made his biggest impact behind the scenes. He's a creative lead for social media for Detroit Mercy basketball. He's in charge of telling the stories and promoting the brands of the players and the program. And over the past month, I think it's safe to say he's had a few more eyeballs on a lot of those posts over the course of the last winning streak. So we'll talk to Alex. And again, a huge thanks to Perry Watson for joining us. Now we shift gears and we talk a little bit more about the here and now of Titans basketball with Alex Khorey.
Well, it doesn't get much better than what we saw in Detroit over the course of the past 48, 72 hours. Detroit Mercy basketball, I think we can officially say they're back. I think the question was, how far back were they? How much were they over the course of maybe the last month or so? But it has just completely snowballed in the best of ways. We come to you now with the second episode of these emergency season of Tighten Up. And we bring back the podcast. And one of the parts of the podcast that we did last year that got more feedback than any other part was when we got a chance to just take a step back and, as they say, talk ball. And that's where Alex Khorey came in. Alex Khorey is a creative lead for Detroit Mercy basketball, and he's now back because the people demanded it. Alex Khorey, welcome back, my man.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back. Tighten up, baby.
It's so wild to see what has happened since we last had a conversation on this podcast. I mean, from the last time we talked, Orlando Lovejoy declared his return for his senior season. And I think that was really where the first domino fell. But it's so much more than that. And as they've kind of put this together piece by piece, I think one of the more satisfying things as we sit here coming off of a weekend sweep to Milwaukee and Green Bay, two teams that really gave the Titans their best shots respectively, is the fact that all of those pieces feel like at one point or another kind of took the bull by the horns, kind of took the reins and became the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think this season has shown more than anything that college basketball is just such a, it's not necessarily linear in terms of how you make it, so it's not like you take a half step here, you take a half step there, you might take 3 steps forward and then unfortunately take 4 steps back based on things, that are potentially out of your control. So to be able to weather any kind of up and down in this sport and to still be here in February and March and playing your best basketball as, we've been playing is something that you just have to be, grateful for, because I think there's teams every year that come out and start great. And then it's just, an injury happens or they just get fatigued. And by the end of the season, they're just not in the best shape that they were built to be in order to make the tournament. And, we're not a Power 5 school. We can't rely on things we did December 15th to get us into the tournament. So it's all about how you perform and your ability to get to Indy. And then, your ability to capitalize on that for the one bid that we have. I don't think Butler's showing back up. So I don't ever think we're going to get a second bid. So to be able to make sure you're playing your best basketball in March and to weather all those things, kind of like you said, and just to be at this moment, it's been so long since the last time we talked, it's just like, you can't help but, like you said, kind of take a step back for a moment and just like take it in and smile and be like, there was a lot of days, put in the gym and, put in and, any aspect of the program that just, it took a long time to get here. So it's great to see some positive results for sure.
So a good chunk of you may be just simply listening to this conversation, although a handful of you can watch this conversation on social media. And if you're watching Alex, you're seeing that he's barricaded in some type of an office setting. I have a feeling that's because you have been working and creating over there when it comes to what this team has done over the past couple of weeks. I would imagine that your days have been a little busier lately.
A little long for sure. I'm in advertising for Nissan, so I also do that. I just graduated in the spring with like a digital media degree, so I also do that as well. So it's been long for sure, but I mean that just kind of kind of puts it into perspective, like what's important. Everybody has to go to work. There's people that have it tougher than you do. But at the same time, there's not people that get an opportunity to, like you said, create outside of work. And like, that really just keeps me going. And like, to the fact that I get to create for my alma mater and get to create, storylines of guys that I personally know and not only elevate their brands to help their basketball careers, but just make more people aware of them as people and them as athletes and them as, players, and most importantly, them as Titans. So, the long days and everything like that are going to be worth it, but not even really for myself, but really just for everyone I'm able to help and make connections with and create something for along the way, make all the tough days worth it.
You nailed it when you were talking about, and you said connections. I think about somebody in your role, and I think about just how much players in a program are desperate for somebody like you and appreciate somebody who does the kind of work that you do. That's got to be probably one of the more rewarding parts of this gig, is to be able to kind of just watch that. I even just recently, I think I saw Orlando Lovejoy comment on the video that you made and tagged you in it. And again, like it's just got to be so fulfilling that not only are you able to celebrate a program, but to celebrate these guys and what they've done, because obviously what they've done has not been easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, not even to, it's really even not, so much about what I do either. There's other people that work in this office that do great work. Jack does great work on photos, and PJ does a great job with his game notes. Like if you really want to know about our team and how we're trending, go read PJ's game notes. But it's absolutely true. I mean, at the end of the day, like I really more think about it as, what can I do to help the team? Like if I could be out there scoring, I promise you I would be. But unfortunately, the physical limitations that, God has blessed me with that are not going to let that happen. So I would, this really is my team and my alma mater, and I really do care about it. And I've cared about it before I was in this position. So, just to be able to do anything to where they're appreciating it just makes me feel not only so good as like, a person and like an individual trying to be successful within the world, but as someone who is a Titan. Like I have a degree, my degree is right here on my desk from Detroit Mercy. So like, I really do bleed, being a Titan through and through. And it's so great to be able to do that for other guys, in a little bit of a different situation, but all doing the same thing, same common goal, all going to get that same piece of paper.
So I feel like we have just so much to cover and not nearly enough time to do it. But I feel like when you think about this basketball season, what's the first thing you think about?
That's a good question. The first thing that comes to my mind, and again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but the first thing that comes to my mind is Antoine. And I'll say this. Yesterday, I saw him post a picture of Orlando with the hashtag LovePoy, which is the campaign we're trying to do for his, Player of the Year campaign, which I think is deserved. But he really is the first person I think about, because I think because he wasn't able to get over that barrier, there's it's so easy to create narratives as if that wasn't successful. But the same things that, and Coach Monty was a part of that as well in 2020 and 2021 when he was here for that second half of the season. So he is the first person I think of, but more relative and more fairly to other, the guys on this team. The first thing I think about is just how many days in the summer. I mean, it gets hot in here. There's, it's an older building. Like the summer workouts in here are really genuinely are difficult for them. And, they go through a lot, and it's very, there's no rotation in the summer. There's no, I'm playing next week. It's very much like, I'm here to get better. That's when you work on your game. That's when you do all those things. So just the days that we were sweating in the gym, that's the first thing that I like tangibly think about in terms of like, wow, this team is really putting some of those things that were worked so hard to achieve out there. From so long ago. And I think, just me being younger, like I'm only 22, I think something like that not only is just like so cool to see as an observer, but I think it can teach you so many like subliminal like life lessons in that too, where it's just like, you're not always going to have, literal or tangible success come out of the get-go. But, it kind of shows you that like, if you just put your head down and keep working, that like things will come when you have the opportunity to seize it. And like to see this team has been doing it. That's really just the first thing I've worked at, is how hard they worked to be in this moment.
Is that the signature of this team as far as you're concerned? Mark Montgomery comes from Tom Izzo, right? He comes from Michigan State. He of course, he did have that half season. It's amazing how many people don't remember the fact that he was actually an assistant coach for Detroit Mercy for a very, very short amount of time. But talk about a valuable experience because it got him familiar with the university in a very quick way. And now he's sort of shaped this team in some ways the same way I think Tom Izzo has shaped his teams at Michigan State.
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing you can take away from this, and this is just kind of things I've seen Izzo say, and then also, have heard and seen the same things, be put into action here. But, it seems like a very much like a control what you can control type of atmosphere. So to go out there and rebound and to go out there and, play defense hard and to be able to run back and all those things are legitimately things that you can control yourself. And I think that's a very big identity of this program is just going out and doing what you need to do, doing your job, and then just in that same swoop, just being able to do the correct things as well. So whenever you kind of bring it, and you're able to go out there and rebound and defend, to be able to execute on offense and all those things, and that all comes from, like you said, just to the beginning is just like a culture of work, being about the right things, working on the right things, getting extra shots up, making sure, you understand where the play is supposed to develop to, not just like where you're supposed to be on that play. All these things are like very subliminal and little, but I think the right things are preached. And, whether that's a product of an environment of being somewhere in like Michigan State, or if it just grows on you and becomes part of who you are, I don't know. I cannot speak to that, but I would say everything is built around work in this program, 100%.
So we've talked, and I think everybody knows what Orlando Lovejoy has done and has meant to the program. By the way, congratulations to Orlando, Horizon League Player of the Week. In the fog of war from that 72-hour span, it didn't even dawn on me that he was going to win that. But of course he was going to win that based on what he did. So congratulations to Orlando Lovejoy, Mr. Love Poi, as some are calling him nowadays. But, last year, he was doing, in some ways, a very similar season as he's done this year. But the difference is that he's clearly got more help. And as we said, there have been people at different times that we've talked about kind of being an answer to, something that maybe the Titans didn't have last season. And what's fun, I think, for all of us to watch is to see somebody like Orlando be the lead option on a team that's going to be so drastically improved. Because sometimes you are the number one option on a team, and that team isn't very good, but he's still the number one option on this team. And now they have flipped a switch, and now they're starting to rewrite some history a little bit. When it comes to the supporting cast, I have a few people that I really like, but I want to give you the chance to name a few first, because he has obviously not done it by himself.
Sure. I think, it's similar in terms of a quarterback giving credit to his O-line, but I think you can't start that discussion without talking about the front court and talking about the bigs and kind of how we've been able to incorporate them. They all do something different. Kambe is like a little bit more of like your traditional big, like back to the basket is going to come up and screen you at the top. He's going to be more of a rim protector. You have Ledge, who's like he's more of like a perimeter type of big, step out, shoot it, can also be a little quicker off the dribble. He does a lot of dribble drive and stuff like that. But then you have London, which is kind of your wild card and is just a very traditional post scorer who's able to inflict his will. I was watching a friend of mine. We were watching Santa Clara and Gonzaga a couple weeks ago, and Graham Ike was just pounding it in the paint. And like obviously, he's not Graham Ike, but in the same way, he is able to get those dominating buckets, which just go so far, and I think help a team a lot. Especially, it's really close to the basket. The one thing about our team is we do shoot a lot of mid range. So at the end of the day, anything you can get that's close to the basket, you're going to take it, and especially to be able to capitalize on those 2 point high percentage attempts is so big. But also, from the guard, like going back to the guard, you got to be able to be inside out team. And, TJ and Tyler have done such a good job of weathering a little bit of a tough start. I think we've seen it, in past teams here where it's just like guys just come out and it's just a little bit of an unfortunate start to the season. Shots don't feel the same as they do in practice or maybe in a live scrimmage, and you have a little bit of a tough go at it to start. But, once you bring those things together and you're able to see, them go through the net. I think it just goes so far with, like you said, a guy like Orlando who wants to drive and get downhill, and you have to respect his game as a driver. So to, have a defender and have two defenders kind of on him, if you have a guy that can knock down, shots or multiple guys that can knock down shots, it can just do so much in opening up your spacing and opening up, how you score on the floor, and just having to respect his drive so much more. Goes so far. So really there could really even just like keep going. Like, even, like Lance comes in and gives Lando kind of that break. I mean, last year there was games where I don't think Lando came off the floor. And at a certain point, it's just hard to play 40 minutes. It's a high minute share. Possessions are hard at this level. You got to dig in, you got to play hard defense. You got to be fast. Guys are strong, they're physical. So it's hard. So to be able to just have guys that are able to take that load off and have him excel in areas where he wants to and where the staff wants him to has just been huge. So, literally every guy on the roster, 1 to 14 has had their own hand. And, even if it's just like a guy like, Zach Abdullah or something, giving guys a look in practice, that goes so far. You know what I mean? Guys can get better from that. You know what I mean? And like, when you have 1 to 14 on the same page, you're a team that can be destined to do special things.
Yeah, they've been fun. I feel like we've had all of them take a moment throughout the course of this year. And, it feels like, and we talked about this with Mark Montgomery last week, was that in today's game, it's so predicated on the three. And when it's not the three, it's an attack of the basket. It's a drive to the hoop. So basically, points are scored in two separate areas of the court. And that's where we get the whole spacing conversation, right? But when you've got a guy like Orlando, who is really such a unique player in today's game. I mean, you can call him a throwback if you want to call him that, but really he's kind of on his own playing field in terms of the rest of the basketball landscape. And thus, I think it gives them that 3-level scoring ability that not a lot of teams these days have. But aside of that, I do want to focus in on one thing that Orlando said. It was after the game against Milwaukee on Friday. And he said, and he didn't have to say this, but when something profound gets said, your ears perk up a little bit. He said that as it pertains to this team, they have, quote, the best chemistry of any team I've ever played on. Go back and watch that interview if you haven't seen it. Matt Kibbe did a terrific job. But what does it mean to you, knowing what you know about this school and knowing what you know about this program, to hear the leader say something like that?
I mean, it's great to see. I think, so many times in college athletics now, it's always about, because players are able to be compensated and because players are in different situations than they've been traditionally, I think it's so easy to come to the conclusion that it's not about the name on the front anymore. But that's not necessarily true, in my opinion. If it's all about, it's really always been about just getting guys to care about a common goal. And in this case, like not only the name on the front in the school, which I do think that is what they play for, but I just think that it's more indicative of the fact that they care so much about each other and care so much about the city of Detroit itself. And I think that goes so far in terms of, playing for what's on the front, because, Detroit's going to be the first thing that you do read on the front, and to have guys that are prideful in that and are going out and when they lose, it means something to them. It hurts them because they don't want to see their city take any losses. I think that goes so far. And then, you kind of get that mercy aspect in terms of like, as the season goes on, it becomes Detroit Mercy, becomes this unique thing that is not only representative of the city and of these guys, but representative of the entire university and, how they're able to come together and play for each other and just have fun out there. I think, a lot of the time it's just when you're having fun on the court, a lot of times you end up winning, I think, in terms of an overall perspective. So it's just been so good to see them smile and so good to see them, go out there and just play so hard. I think that's also indicative of, a good, strong team chemistry and culture. Like you're not going to play hard for guys that you don't care about. You know what I mean? And just at the end of the day, you might take that one possession off or whatever. And I mean, we won by one, legitimate possession, discounting the 2 fouls at the end. One possession that you take off could be the difference between going to overtime and winning that game. So, or even, losing or something like that. So I think that it really does go so far, and there's so many facets to it and directions that you could take. But I think that you hit it on the head for sure.
In and of itself, I'm glad you brought that up. It almost had felt like, and I think we've even talked about this at one point or another, it felt like in years past, this team either won a game by 20 points or lost by 20 points or 30 points. It was really no in between. And thus, winning those tight games, winning those close games, that to me is the biggest difference as it pertains to this team. They've actually learned how to win, which is something that doesn't come with a 20-point victory. It comes with the one possession, the two possession games, and they have a good collection of those. So now they look towards the final weekend of the regular season and how this is all going to shake out as it pertains to the Horizon League tournament. And we'll end on this one because obviously there's still some basketball left to be played. And, as we kind of look at what's left on the table, I don't know, it gets more and more apparent that the Titans, for all the great work that they have done to this point, they might actually need to win another game. They might actually need to win another game in order to go into that top 5, into that spot that's going to allow them the chance to host a first round game. So what do you think? What do you think happens in these games against two really tough teams? There are a lot of other teams that are very happy that they don't have to deal with Oakland and Robert Morris.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just off the, first impressions to the question, I think it's hard to win on the road in college basketball. No matter if you have one win or if you have 30 wins, it's hard to go into somebody's gym and come out with a victory. That being said, I don't think that there's another team that is as tested and is as able to go into a tough environment. It's not something that, we've been used to doing this late in the season. So I think the guys will be more excited for the opportunity than, at all intimidated or at all not able to, show up in the moment to keep it simple, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you something, Alex. Let's hope it's not the last time that we're having a conversation about this group because they've already done so many things to surprise us. I got a feeling that they still have a few more surprises left in store. Alex Khorey, creative lead for Detroit Mercy basketball. Thanks so much for spending some time with us because it's about time we had a conversation that sounded something like this.
It is definitely about time. It's most definitely about time.
Good stuff from Alex Khorey and a great, honest conversation about what we have seen over the course of this season. So much fun that we've been able to have watching Detroit Mercy basketball. Tighten Up podcast continues throughout the week as we go down the home stretch of Horizon League season and into the Horizon League tournament. Big ups to Alex Khorey and a big thank you to also Perry Watson for joining us on a very special edition of this emergency season of Tighten Up the podcast. We still have a couple more episodes left as we give credence to what has been this very exciting run for the Titans over the course of the past month and a half. Hopefully, we've got more beyond that, but right now, we are focused so heavily in on the home stretch, and it's so nice that we got a chance to see all of this happen and be able to go along for this ride with you. We know how much you liked this podcast last year. We were so happy that we got to bring it back when it mattered most. So we'll be back again with another episode next week. Again, one last time, a huge thanks to Perry Watson and also Alex Khorey, the creative lead for Detroit Mercy basketball on social media. It all continues as this season rolls along. Hopefully we'll have some more victories to talk about this time next week. This has been Tighten Up the podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Tighten Up the podcast. Join our community at The Shield on theshieldnil.org and follow us on X and Instagram at The Shield NIL.
If I can tell you one thing above all else as part of this show, it would be this. If you're unfamiliar, if you haven't done it before, join the community at The Shield Online. It's online at theshieldnil.org. That's theshieldnil.org.